Hello and welcome to Some Dude Shed. We're still not in the shed due to outside circumstances. We have been consigned to our rooms.
There's a
So
termite infestation this time.
yeah, and as you know, anybody who's a keen shedder will know that termites are very bad for sheds.
It's basically shed cancer.
Basically, yeah. So we'll be playing our game of True or False. We each have a story to tell from the depths of history. And it's up to us to figure out who's right or not. So, Mr. Red, I believe you're first.
Well, mine's set in World War II, obviously, because it always is.
Because no other
Right.
time period exists.
Exactly. Why would you want any other time period? It was the best time period.
Well, it was a difficult one to get through, apparently.
You know about the Battle of Stalingrad, right?
Yeah.
Well, historically, it's essentially seen as the turning point of the Second World War, and it was quite the meat grinder. Soviets put up one hell of a fight, beat the Germans.
They involved everybody, even the little people.
Well, once we find out that wasn't true, Mr. Gray.
Oh yes, of course.
But yes, so it was just a brutal battle. Nobody came out of it well off, and this was the first major turning point in the Germans being thrown back instead of their continuous advance. As recognition for the brutality of the battle, Winston Churchill had a commemorative sword made, and it was called the Sword of Stalingrad.
All right.
The sword was commissioned and was made by Wilkinson Sword Company.
Wilkinson Sword. Really?
As in the shaver people?
As in the shaver people.
Yes.
Okay.
Bollocks.
This was presented at the Tehran conference in November 1943. The sword was presented by Winston Churchill himself to Stalin. Stalin took possession of the blade.
Right.
Kissed the scabbard. Went to hand the blade to a Mr. Clement Vorslov. I'm not pronouncing that right. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I apologize for that. Well, sorry, it's Marshal Clement Vorslov. Yes, but the funny thing about that was whenever Stalin went to turn to give the sword to the Marshal, he turned the sword the wrong way around, and the sword fell out onto the ground.
Oh.
And the Marshal quickly gathered it up. No word as to what happened to the Marshal after failing to foresee Stalin's mistake. And there may have been some gulag time. Who knows?
Oh, that's embarrassing.
So basically, Stalin dropped the commemorative sword.
Yes, and since this was the Tehran conference, Roosevelt was there and witnessed this as well. And yeah, so basically, did Winston Churchill commission Wilkinson Sword Company to create a commemorative sword called the Sword of Stalingrad for the Battle of Stalingrad and presented it to Stalin, who then proceeded to drop it.
It sounds believable. I'm almost like up to the point when Stalin would drop it, because it fell out of the sheath, right? So
Yes. Scabbard, sheath, whatever you want to call it.
I'm trying to figure out how that would work. So he must have just he either handed it to him upside down, which would be ridiculous, because Stalin wasn't a terribly tall person, was he? So if he's handing it up to a guy, there'd be less chance of him. I can't figure out how that works. But I can imagine a sword being commissioned as a reward or commemoration.
Yeah, it's not that uncommon. Oh, I mean, it is now, but I mean, swords were used ceremonially. Still are up until recent times. Like, the Queen still bloody knights people with a sword.
I think she uses a lightweight one now.
She uses she's just go ahead and just use a lightsaber. That'd be way cooler, isn't it?
A bit more dangerous. Goodness.
Jedi Knight people.
So was there?
What's the true or false exactly? Like,
did Stalin drop the commemorative sword?
Did he drop? Well, did Stalin drop it, or the guy that took the sword drop it?
I think we're concentrating too much on the dropping. It's did Churchill have Wilkinson's sword create a sword to commemorate the Battle of Stalingrad? I think that's
So
the more the better I wanted to concentrate on.
So did the Razor people have a sword made?
Okay,
Potentially, yes.
here's a question. Was there an inscription on the sword?
Yes.
What did it say?
The best a man could get. I know it's Gillette. Like,
To the steel-hearted people of Stalingrad, as to the steel-hearted citizens of Stalingrad.
Right. Well, I'm going to guess false.
by our razors. Well, I mean,
It sounded
it's
a
just
little bit like you were making that one up on the spot.
this is way back then. So, I mean, companies like that back then used to, what do you call that? Like have their fingers in many pies. I'm trying to think of an example, but there's like other companies that, like pre-World War companies that sort of had expertise in many different things. You see that to a much lesser extent these days. Like, you know, the way Sony kind of have their fingers in many pies. Like, I think Sony made, I think they made like more household products and stuff, like actual appliances. But I don't think they do that so much anymore.
Yeah, I think Japanese companies are probably actually a very good example of the opposite. I know that Toyota, the car company, started out making looms, to make fabric, and they still make
Yeah,
them.
they still make them.
Yeah, they still make them. I think they're only
Right.
used in Japan, but they still make those looms.
Yamaha, they kind of make pianos and motorcycles, like just completely two different ends of the spectrum. Like, you know, worlds apart, but you know, they're like, okay, let's make pianos and this. And Wilkinson, are they a British company?
They're called Wilkinson. They must be.
They could be like Australian or like, you know. Do you know, Mr. Red?
I believe they're British. Yes.
They are British.
I'm going to assume they're English.
So Churchill then could have asked them to make it, and it could just be a happy coincidence that the sword is in the name. Do you know if they made anything else apart from, say, razors? Not swords, but did they make anything else?
If it was a factory during the war, they probably made something a bit more aggressive.
I just know them as the Razor Company.
So they could have made literally anything at that time. They could have machined like car parts or like plane parts or anything to help the war effort. Or weapons even. They could have helped make weapons, which would
If
have
they can
included daggers.
if they can make a sword, you can make a bayonet.
Exactly.
Oh,
I think
okay, right.
when they're a bit beyond bayonets in the Second World War.
Yeah, they still had them.
Still had them, didn't they?
But then maybe he's expecting us to be like, nah, they have Wilkinson's sword. Doesn't just because they're called sword doesn't mean they make swords. So they're probably doing that as like a bluff kind of thing. But then maybe it's a double bluff. Like, see, they're probably thinking, well, they're gonna think because I use sword because the sword's in the name, they'll be like, nah, it's too obvious. So they'll say no. But then
Sword of Stalingrad.
It could be a triple bluff.
I'll call your triple bluff and say true.
Triple, ultra, quadruple, super bluff.
Bluffception. Let's do this.
I'll say
true.
I'll say false.
You're going true, miss.
Yeah, I
I'll
just
go
think
true. Yes.
I just think it's a regular old triple bluff and not a quadruple bluff.
And you're going false, Mr. Gray? Okay. Well, I can tell you it is true.
Oh, yes.
Amazing.
I think it's actually the first one I've got right in a long time.
I was just blown away that Wilkinson's swords actually made swords. I just thought they were a razor company, and it was a quite modern thing, but apparently not.
Yeah.
We got a picture of it.
Yes, I do actually.
Well, there it is.
Ooh. Is that like a legendary sword, or is it just like an epic sword?
Oh,
It's an English broadsword.
I reckon this is one of the ones that would have a like a purple label to it. Pretty rare.
A purple, so it'd be like a purple.
Later on, Wilkinson went and made 3 copies. One of them was given to the Americans, which is currently up for sale, I believe. Another one's on display in a museum. The actual original sword made 3 trips to be displayed in a museum in England during the Cold War. That's how significant that that piece was
Wow.
to
Yeah.
commemorate the loss.
That is quite special. You know, you get a gift like that between two world leaders. It's quite something. Yeah, that's very
I don't know, if
special.
I was presented a sword like that, I'd be like, fuck yeah. Swords are still pretty cool. I think armies should still go to war with swords.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very cool they are. Oh, I'd preferably not go to war, but just be like, yeah, we have swords.
Ride your dolphins in the battle.
Yes.
Anyway.
Anyway, so shall we move on to my story?
Hell
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so my story happens in 1976, but it starts in 1303 BC. So
Wow.
long
So
time
it's a
ago.
time traveling guy, is it?
Yeah, but time traveling in
He
this
makes a time machine.
time traveling in the slow way. I'm sure you've both heard of Ramesses the Great.
King Ramses, that was the bloody guy in Courage the Cowardly Dog. You know the guy that's like, return the slab.
Slab.
That's
Return
literally
the
him.
slab.
I literally gave me fucking nightmares for like a week. Return the slab.
Probably didn't do his own voice though.
Well, I don't think it was actually King Ramses himself. Showed up to Cartoon Network Studios and was like, "Yeah, I'll do the voice for you."
Well, he could have he could have travelled though. So as it will be explained. So he's known as one of the greatest pharaohs. He won several battles, including the Battle of Kadesh, which is very well documented. And he died at the age of 96.
That's not bad.
Which is pretty good for 3,000 years ago. At one point in 1881, his body was discovered, and he was put on display in the Museum of Antiquities in Egypt. This is in 1881. So, but fast forward to 1970s. 1975, a French doctor who came along and saw the mummy on display, found that the remains of the mummy were being threatened by fungus on the basically on the surface of the mummy, and he was worried that this could destroy the mummy. There would be nothing left. So the Egyptians weren't really looking after the mummy in the best way. They weren't keeping it sealed in a controlled environment or anything like that. I think it was just sort of left out so people could look at him.
Your mummy neglect.
So the plan was to get the mummy of Ramesses sent off to France, so it could be seen to by experts who could take care of Ramesses' fungal problem and basically save the mummy to keep it safe. Except there was a problem. No one, living or dead, may enter France without a passport.
Oh no.
So basically, they made a passport for Ramesses the second. It says on the passport his date of birth is 1303 BC. Nationality Egyptian. Date of expiry 9th of the 3rd, 1981.
Was his occupation on there?
Yep, he king, and then in brackets deceased. During the examination, it turns out he had hair, which was amazingly preserved after 3,000 years, and it still had a bit of pigment in it, which is very impressive. But they managed to get the fungal problem sorted out, and he was sent back to Egypt, back to the museum, where he's now in a controlled environment, and he remains to this day.
Okay. So what's the true or false here?
Did they make a passport for King Ramesses II so he could fly to France?
For a body?
Yes.
For a how many 1,000-year-old body?
About 3,000 years. A little bit more, but 3,000 years.
So basically you're saying, did they make a passport for a piece of beef jerky?
Human jerky. But yeah.
It could go either way, couldn't it? Sorry, what was the true or false again?
Well, did they make a passport for Ramesses?
A passport.
Well, it's bureaucracy at its finest, isn't it?
It
So
is.
yeah, I'm gonna go true.
I mean,
Sounds like Mr. Black's really struggling to get his head around this one.
what do they do then if, say, somebody, like they know someone's a French citizen, but they're dead, so their body can't return home then if there's no like passport.
In those cases, what generally happens is that, well, if let's say they're on holiday, they'll probably have a passport whenever they left, so they can have their passport when they come back again. This was a slightly unusual situation when someone who was foreign and also dead for 3,000 years wanted to go to the country. So,
Right. And how did they get rid of the fungus?
how did they get rid of it? I don't know.
I
Very,
don't think
very, very careful
I,
work.
I don't think the fungus is the.
Yeah, that's not really the strange part of the story.
Well, it does because like, well then why did he need to go to France in the first place to remove the fungus? You know
No,
what I
but
mean?
the true or false is the passport.
I know, I know what you're saying. Like, I know that's what the true or false is, but then he wouldn't have needed a passport unless he had to go to France. But if he had to go to France to get a specific type of work done, surely that work would have been significant, other than just delicately and removing the fungus.
Here's a question. Sorry. So that's the first time Ramses left the country, assumingly that he had to get a passport.
Well, it's the first time in 3,000 years he left the country. Yeah,
Yes, lol.
I mean he did go to Syria.
Has he left the country since?
I don't think so. No, I think he's
I
stayed in Egypt.
was just wondering if the passport needed to be used again.
I actually don't know. It's possible. He's such a famous dude. He might have gone on tour.
Yeah, I know that's true. I just think it's just so bureaucratically stupid. It wouldn't surprise me. The government will make money some way, and might as well make some money off a dead pharaoh. Has to pay for that passport.
It's true. And the Egyptian, it would be the Egyptians that were making money out of it. The French were the ones who demanded the passport.
You know what? Sure, whatever. It's France, so it's only because it's France. If it was any other country, I'd be like, nah, that's ridiculous.
They are big fans of their bureaucracy in France.
Yep. You need a passport.
Well, I can tell you that it is true.
Did they give him a right?
It is true. Ramesses II was given a passport in the 70s.
I'm not even. I'm just. I'm not sorry. I'm not even surprised. It's just government red tape.
Sadly, the image of his passport isn't public because it's private to Mr. Ramesses himself. But there is an artist's rendition of what it could have looked like. In fact, this is probably what it did look like.
Wow.
That's wow.
That's a hell of a mugshot.
I love the idea that they
Yeah.
have to check the face after they land. They have to, the guy at the passport check-in has to check it.
Well, that's not fair. When you take your passport photo, you're supposed to look serious.
Day of birth, BC. That's brilliant.
Yeah, he's supposed to open his eyes.
Imagine if it had said McLovin on it. Like the full name. I am McLovin.
Well, there's one more amazing thing about this story. Even more amazing that he had a passport. Is that during the examination, remember I said that the hair was very well preserved, and it showed some pigment.
Yes.
Well, it turns out he was ginger.
No way. The curse stretches back that long.
Yeah. He was a fair-skinned person with wavy ginger hair.
Wait a minute. Was he not incestuous? Was he not a product of incest?
Probably. It's so long ago. I'm not sure if Ramesses' family tree is family.
Pretty sure he had 3 single strands of ginger hair in Courage the Cowardly Dog. So there you go. it's historically accurate.
Absolutely. There you go. Ramesses II was ginger.
Does Ramses also have like a slab with him that he has?
Oh, he's got loads.
Does he actually have a slab?
He's Ramesses was a very prolific builder. There's loads of stuff in Egypt that was built by him, and there's loads of stuff written in stone from his reign.
Nice.
So, does he have a slab? He's got several million, yeah.
Well,
probably several hundred.
Shall we?
But yes, moving on.
Shall we get to the final?
All right, Mr. Black. So, I'm looking forward to this.
I'm not. Well, see how it goes. Man arrested for launching backyard space shuttle. That's basically it.
Okay.
But okay, so this takes place in 2011 in Cross City. It's a wee town in Dixie County in Florida. So yes, this is Florida, man.
Of course it is. No other brave adventurer out there would dare to take on this task.
Yeah. So Cross City has a population of 1,728. So it's only like a wee small town and sparsely populated. So it's nice quiet wee area. The man in question is Liam Rogers. He's 37 years old at the time this happened. He always wanted to be an astronaut, which was mainly inspired by his school trip to the Kennedy Space Center when he was a small child. He soon realized, though, that space flight wasn't for him, because he was like deathly afraid of heights. And space is very high up, so he didn't fancy it. But he then realized, because he was very good with tools and chemicals, he thought to himself, well, you know what, then I'll become an engineer for NASA. And he found it very appealing as well because, he would still be able to get involved in space exploration, but without directly putting himself in any sort of danger or, so he thought it was ideal. He sent his resume or CV to NASA and waited anxiously for a reply. His application was declined, though, citing that he was unsuitable for positions in NASA's engineering division, as he was unqualified and inexperienced. He only worked in a garage, like just like fixing cars, not like a petrol garage. Like he fixed cars for a living. And he only had a high school education. He also had a criminal record, which included the charge of assault with a weapon, where he threw he threw a sandwich at a Subway worker and tried to beat him with a plastic tray. I mean,
Brilliant.
Subway is in like Subway sandwiches.
Yeah,
So
I guess that.
He knew he was perfect for the job after all. He was good with tools and DIY. So why wouldn't they hire him? He thought. So he decided to set out and prove his worth by documenting the design, build, and launch of his very own rocket. He began drawing designs inspired by current and previous NASA rockets. He intensely researched previous missions, in particular the ones that failed or had problems, so he can avoid them himself. When it got to the fabrication process, he stayed in work after hours to machine all the parts he needed and then transport them home in his pickup truck, because this was Florida. Using his homemade beer and vodka expertise, he made homemade rocket propellant using various chemicals he was able to buy over the counter.
Are you able to give an example?
Well, no. For legal reasons, I cannot discuss the chemicals used and the process involved in how he made rocket propellant.
Wherever you sourced this from, is not going to be able to say that either.
Yeah. If I did source it, you tried to catch me out there, didn't you? You sneaky devil. The launch day arrived. Everything was accounted for. All systems are go. He then realized he had a small problem. Every stage was recorded on video. Everything from the drawing board all the way up to getting ready to launch. But he didn't think that was enough proof. He planned to recover the rocket with a parachute system installed in the nose cone, but he thought NASA would accuse him of faking the recovery of the rocket, which would otherwise prove the mission was a success. He then found a flawless solution for this. His pet gerbil, Chunky. Chunky would be his astronaut, because if Chunky went into space and returned safe and sound, then for sure Liam would be accepted into NASA. Liam loaded Chunky into his own little compartment with straw and a little toy to comfort him during this perilous journey.
Okay. Oh, I gotta know how it went. Did he survive?
Well, I mean, I'll not spoil it. After a 10-second countdown, Liam launched the rocket, which then violently hurtled towards the stars. Meanwhile, at the US Air Force East Coast Radar Station, they were alerted to the anomaly, which disappeared 1.4 miles east from its initial point of detection. Military police were sent to the initial point of alert and the last point of contact. They discovered a crash site and quickly locked down the area, keeping the local population in the dark. Because I think this sort of sparked like UFO stuff, and the fact that it was a crash site, I think they were sort of thinking to themselves, "What the fuck? Like, is this
When was this? When did this happen?
2011?"
Right.
Police arrive at Liam's location and conduct a thorough search of the area. They find all the evidence they need when they discover various chemical compounds in his shed, all conveniently labeled. He was charged in court for possession and use of dangerous chemicals, reckless endangerment, and animal cruelty. He currently serves his 22-year sentence. So
Where did the animal cruelty come in?
Well, the Chunky died.
Oh,
Is there not some aviation laws there he would have broke as well?
probably. Why not throw them in there as well?
I don't know.
Maybe even building a rocket.
It probably did include those charges, but I just chucked in.
So basically, what's the true or false?
Man arrested for launching backyard space shuttle.
And it's a Florida man.
In fact, I'll change it. Florida man arrested for launching backyard space shuttle.
Well,
But there's a
here we
lot
go.
of there's a lot of detail in that, and I feel like you just added this. See, there's a lot of detail in that, and we know to not have, stray into too much detail. And the fact that you went on to add in the criminal record for the subway thing, and Chunky the hamster.
Well, yeah. I felt that was irrelevant though, because it was relevant because of the animal. I thought that was the more. Well, it's not funny. I felt
How
bad
big
for
was the
Chunky.
rocket? How big was the rocket?
I don't know actually.
What was he hoping to like?
It wasn't.
Was
It
he,
wasn't like a full. It wasn't a full size rocket. It was like almost like one of those homemade rockets that you get in those kits. But he made it like all from scratch. He made it from like metal parts and stuff.
And was he hoping to literally get it into outer space?
Um,
For a guy that's smart enough to actually put a rocket together like this, you think, depending on
think
where he's
so.
targeting, was he hoping to get it into outer space?
I think he ideally he would have wanted to get into space, but I think the main goal was to just fly it up there and recover it, and like just as part of documenting the whole thing.
How would you recover it though if it went into space?
He attached the parachute system in the nose cone.
Yeah, but if it went into space, then it's just going to burn up on the way in. If it somehow makes it through the atmosphere.
I don't think it was ever going to go that high.
Nah, I couldn't imagine it would have went into space with the size of it.
If a guy was able to do this, you'd think he'd be smart enough to think, well, if I want to go this high, I might as well just use a giant weather balloon.
In fact, you know what? I think given the fact he was scared of heights, he probably made something that was tall enough to not require a ladder. You know, or short enough to not require a ladder, if that makes sense.
He's terrified.
I don't know. Like, just imagine it would have maybe just been the height of him.
Being scared of heights, making a space rocket doesn't sound like a very sensible thing to do. Not that it is a sensible thing to do for anyone, but
Well, it's just a little small, like homemade rocket, not a full size, like bloody NASA rocket. But I think he built it to not the same specifications, but he just built something that was like a cone shape, and we just go up straight up.
Well, Mr. Guy, what do you think?
I don't know. It sounds possible. It does sound possible. Making a rocket that just goes straight up, it's not the hardest thing in the world. I mean, the hard bit of rocket science is getting it into orbit. Just making something shoot upwards is quite easy.
Did he say what he was like overall? What he was hoping to achieve? Was he hoping to get like noticed by NASA or something?
Well, he wanted to sure he applied for jobs for NASA, but they
Yeah,
wouldn't take him because he only had a high school education and he had a criminal record.
And
He thought to document this whole thing and then send it off, getting it back, and if Chunky was still survived the trip, they'd be like, "Wow, this is amazing! Get him on the team."
I just have to say, Chunky's a really shit name for a hamster.
Well, he's probably, a chunky boy.
Chunky.
It's a believable name, Bram.
Well, no, he's a gerbil. No, he wasn't a hamster. He's a gerbil.
What's the other one? Mm,
Per chunky.
but that's true. He's a bit fucky. Fucked.
Yeah, but this guy, because he lived in a very tiny town in Florida, had like a tiny population, and like he was kind of rural. I don't know. He doesn't strike me, and the fact he did get charged for bloody getting into a fight with a subway worker, he doesn't strike me as a very smart man.
Did he? What was the sentence?
22 years.
2 years seems like an awful lot of time for basically just being stupid. I mean, that's in England land. That's that's pretty much a sentence for murder, isn't it?
Probably, but he'd probably only get half of that if in his probation. But then he was a previous offender, so maybe that's why it was high.
Maybe.
But like he set off the radar, the military radar, and the military police to get called out. So it could have been, it could have been that. Like when you get the military involved and there's a military response, like it probably carries its own set of charges. I don't know. I don't know the legal ins and outs, but
I feel there's a lot of detail on it, and we know to stay away from that. You made it sound like a good, I don't know, news reported article. That's a hard one.
I'm going to say true. There's a lot of detail in that story, and
yeah, no, but that's the thing. That's the thing, though. But the previous criminal conviction, and the chunky the hamsters, the two things that stand out to me. There's a bit too much detail.
Were you saying that that Mr. Black put so much detail in that he'd throw us off by putting too much detail in?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Detailception.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure Mr. Black would do that kind of double bluff. I'll stick to.
From what I'm gathering, the chunky thing was part of his testimony. What was your reasoning for putting the animal? I think it was part of his defense. It wasn't actually purposely hurt the animal. It was,
Why did he put the animal in the rocket again?
Because if he's sent the animal up and it came back down and it was still alive, then that would have further proved that his rocket was a success.
But he planned for the rocket to go into outer space, and he put the animals in it. Obviously, the animal's going to die unless he provided a mini astronaut suit for the animal.
I didn't make up the part of was going to space. I don't know what his goal was. I don't know what was going on in his head. But the fact he put a parachute system in tells me he probably didn't expect it to go into space because of the size of the rocket.
So you admit you just made up part of the story then?
Well, I just assumed he wanted to go into space. I just made the assumption. But
all right.
I think it makes sense because the fact he put the parachute in, he expected to come back down, and obviously, it would have added credence to his project if the fucking gerbil was still alive.
You also have to remember this is a Florida man, and they are the wildest creatures on Earth. They'll do anything .
Yeah, I love as well that all the chemicals were labeled, perfectly labeled, for his convenience, but they were awfully convenient for the police as well.
Well, you don't want to mix them up.
Yeah.
I think my gut's telling me there's a bit too much detail on it. So I'm gonna. I don't know. I really want it to be true because that's fucking hilarious. I feel bad for the hamster.
I know. As soon as I heard the name was, as soon as I realized the fucking gerbil, it's a gerbil. His name was Chunky. I was like, oh no, Chunky's a brilliant name for a small animal.
I feel bad for the animal. Nah, my gut's telling me to go false. I'm gonna go false.
I'm gonna say true.
Radio. Mr. Gray's true.
Mr. Gray's going true. I'm going false.
You're going false. All right. Yeah, it was made up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's the subway thing. It's just
Oh, but it's so.
I don't know, but see, that's stuff that could be included in an article.
Stuff that could be included, but it's too much detail. We know not to go into too much detail because we know this from past segments.
Or it could be in a documentary. his previous criminal record for getting into a fight with a subway worker. Do a sandwich and beat him with a tray. Like, you know.
I don't know. Just from past experiences, we've always there's been a few times we've been caught out by adding too much detail on it must be true, and I feel like you've tried to do that, and then to bluff us into going true.
I wrote
That's
that
it.
in 30 minutes. I'm quite proud of
So you,
Yeah.
so you should be.
Yep.
that. Well, see, I was hoping that story would just sort of add to, like, how stupid this man is. Like, okay, this guy's clearly a dum dum. Like, why?
Well, the fact that you made it a Florida man is the most sellable part of it.
Yeah, that too. I apologize to any Florida people. They're probably listening to this. It's not all of yous are bad or weird or insane. I reckon if you type in Florida man rocket, I reckon something like this would actually come up, which would make this true, which would then make you wrong.
Yeah, but
In fact,
that would
I
be
gotta look it up right now. Let's see. Florida.
Florida man rocket.
that wouldn't surprise me if a Florida man came up with a rocket. To be honest.
Well,
Typed in Florida. But I typed in Florida man rocket. Replica grenade launcher found in Florida man's luggage. Florida. Florida man attempts to board plane with rocket propel grenade. Florida man tries to fly home with a military style rocket propel. Oh, it's a bloody rocket grenade launcher again. Yeah.
Very good. I think it's time to round this segment up.
Yep.
Until next time.
Yep. Until next time.
Bye bye.
Bye.